I'm sharing my screen. So, all right. So we're discussing this question. Let's go through it once more and break it down for our own understanding. We're writing a magazine article for young people, advising them what they need to consider when deciding on a holiday destination. In your article, evaluate the ideas, opinions, and attitudes in both texts and suggest what young people should consider in order to make a responsible decision. So, audience is very important. You need to understand what your audience is. We're writing an article for young people. So it has to be, either it's written for a young adult magazine or for a school magazine, maybe, right? But your audience is young people. And it's all about holiday destination, choices regarding holiday destination. So there are going to be two texts in the insert. This is what the question tells us. So that means both of these texts will be about holiday choices and holiday destinations. So you need to talk about the ideas of the writer regarding holiday destinations. Now, at this point in time, we don't really know what the argument will be about, whether the writer's going to argue about holiday places, is going to maybe argue about how to get to holiday destinations, or maybe what would the factors that you need to consider while deciding on places to go for holidays. We're not aware of anything that the article or the insert would be talking about. But one thing we know for sure is that we'll have to pick up on the ideas and we'll have to agree with one of the ideas, one of the sides of the ideas. And then our entire article will be based on us sort of justifying our claims and strengthening our point of views by providing reasons for whatever side we agree with and denying or disagreeing with the claims that we don't agree with. Okay. All right. And up to almost 10 marks should be available for the content, because this, if we look at the new patterns for GCE, English language 1123, so the mark distribution is a bit different. We're using IGCSE exam paper. This is why it has a different mark distribution as compared to your GCE exam paper. Okay. So let's say we need to pick up almost 10 content points, and assuming that you're given maybe 15 marks for this style of writing. Style of writing is, again, your language and your use of language, literature devices, and punctuation, grammar, vocabulary, and everything. But now let's first of all focus on picking up 10 content points. Here's the insert for this paper. Okay. The first passage is about, can the world be saved from over tourism? And the second text is about famous tourist destinations. Okay, let's see what kind of arguments there are now, because you see we're a bit blank as to what the writer would be talking about and how are we going to curate this article. So it's very important for us to get into these arguments, try to understand what all of this debate is about, and then see the kind of claims that we can establish in this response. All right, guys, are we on the same page? Should we start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, we've officially entered the era of too much tourism. Sand has been removed by tourists from famous beaches, and some cities impose fines on ferry tourists just for sitting down in crowded hotspots. As local people fear being priced out of their towns and cities, stringent rules and limitations are imposed on holiday rentals. In Thailand, one popular destination has been closed indefinitely to allow its ecosystem to recover from the millions of tourists who have visited over recent years. Tourism taxes are becoming more common and in some areas are being used to restrict access to all but the wealthier clientele. So now this paragraph is all about the disadvantages of tourism and how tourists can be actually harmful for places.
सर
Um,
लास्ट वर्ड का क्या मीनिंग है?
wealthier clients, okay, a clientage, like wealthier client. They're saying that these tourists in some areas, tourism taxes are becoming more common, and in some areas are being used to restrict access to all but wealthier clientele. Like when you impose so many heavy taxes, some people might not be able to pay those taxes off. But wealthier clients, it will be easy for them to pay those taxes and still access those tourist areas. So by imposing a certain amount of tax, you're only limiting a certain population from accessing that place. Whereas people who can
Okay.
afford, they can still pay. Okay. So now let's try to up. We need to sort of let's start picking up the arguments by just understanding this paragraph. We can sort of predict the nature of this. our passage. This entire passage is about over tourism and the disadvantages over tourism brings with it. So naturally, we can know that we need to highlight all of the arguments about over tourism. Okay, let's see. Sand has been removed by tourists from beaches. We can use this claim as destruction to public places like beaches, where beaches are supposed to serve as a very calm place full of serenity. But the influx of tourists on beaches is just causing destruction to beaches, right? Then tourists sitting down in crowded hotspots, that these major city centers or places where there's already a high influx of tourism, people are just making them overcrowded by just being there and doing nothing, sitting all day long. Usually that's what people do when they visit places. Tourists, this is how they make the most of places. But again, if place is already crowded and you see a lot of people visiting a place, you would naturally you notice that place could just become choked up, and this urban clutter could be very dangerous for these urban centers. Okay, then as local people fear being priced out of their own towns, that means when a place is very open to tourists, generally it's more expensive because the locals they try to earn from the tourist visiting that area. So there's the locals, most of the times they also fear that things might become so expensive that the affordability for them might become difficult. Okay, stringent rules and limitations are imposed on holiday rentals. Yeah. In Thailand, one popular destination has been closed indefinitely to allow its ecosystem to recover from the millions of tourists who visit it over recent years. Okay, over tourism can also lead to closure of places, closure of tourist places. Now, what's the disadvantage of that? If closures happen, number one, local businesses might be at loss, right? Just for this recovery period for a city, what if your businesses get closed? What if there's a certain limitation that's imposed by the government or the local state authorities? What's going to happen to your business? You're going to face losses, right? So this is another disadvantage. And then about this taxes thing, the tourism taxes, they're in place and they might just be ineffective because then a certain class would still be accessing, or either that class might even access that area more because you're removing a certain financial group or a certain social group from accessing that place, right? These are all the arguments that we've identified. I think we can easily pick up 4 to 5 arguments from just the first paragraph. Let's say if you pick up almost 3 arguments, 3 good arguments from this paragraph. Okay, moving on. In a recent forum, tourism experts said that over tourism was real. The overcrowding on the streets, the rising rents, the hostility of residents, they can't be denied. See, there are some other disadvantages as well. Overcrowding, rising rents, hostility of residents, residents becoming less sensitive towards people and maybe just wanting them to go back. So this is all another effect of over tourism. Now remember, throughout while reading a passage, if you pick up information that you think is similar to a thing that you've already talked about, जिस तरह से यहाँ पे there's overcrowding, and the writer has already talked about this crowdedness in public places. You can just talk about this point as a single point in your argument when you're writing it and use examples from both of these claims. Okay, you don't have to repeat information, guys. Listen, you don't have to repeat information. You can just pick up the same points and maybe group them together while you're creating an argument in your own article or your letter. Over tourism takes different forms in different places. In European cities, the overcrowding and pressure on resources such as energy, water, and health services are obvious. But in many countries across the globe, too many people are trying to gain access to fragile landscapes, buildings, and ancient monuments. Now, the first point that you can pick up from this passage is pressure on energy, water, health, infrastructure. Right? Obviously, you'll have to cater to the needs of people coming into your country, and you'll have to provide them with all of these facilities to live. And it's a burden on these existing infrastructure facilities. Then the fragility of landscapes, natural areas, buildings, important monuments, which sort of serve as important heritage places for a city or a country, they get destroyed. Right? We can pick up 2 more arguments from this passage. Now, in Iceland, the situation is different. Growth has been very fast, explained the country's head of tourism. She was quick to clarify there are advantages to this tourism boom. Iceland's economy has been transformed. It's improved our lives. We enjoy a wide range of services and we can fly to more destinations. Now the writer over here is talking about the positives of tourism. I'm gonna underline the positive tourism in blue color. Okay. Now this claim is exactly the opposite of whatever we've been talking about up till now. Yes. So this is, let's say this is the first claim that we have as an advantage of tourism. Okay. But pressure on popular tourist sites leaves environmental damage and changes people's attitudes. Environmental damage, okay, you can talk about that. This is another negative aspect. Social media plays a role and brings challenges and opportunities. Iceland's landscape attracts attention. With hot springs and dramatic landscapes, some celebrity puts a selfie and suddenly hundreds start visiting some remote waterfall that isn't ready for the numbers. That means people can access these remote areas that cannot cater to a huge number of tourists. But because someone famous might have been to that place, people just suddenly start going to those places. Because of the influencer trends these days, you see people going to places on Instagram, on social media, and you're like, okay, we want to visit this place as well. So such expectations can be difficult to manage. Then over tourism impacts housing and the lives of local people and does not always bring benefits. Tourists in big groups visit some of the oldest places in the world, using companies that don't share their wealth and with local communities. That creates conflict with the population because they consider that tourist hotspots to be theirs. That's their own culture, their own ancestors, and they get no benefits, said one expert. So, housing and lives of people, right? Um, that when people visit these local communities, local areas which are generally more isolated, which are more what do you say, more confined into just a specific type of people. When people from the outside would start accessing those areas, it might get difficult for the locals to actually share those spaces, right? So this is what you can talk about, that the culture would get impacted. Another negative point of over tourism. So we have three, four, five, six. We've got six disadvantages and one advantage of over tourism up till now. Guys, is there any question so far?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, passage number B is taken from a magazine article about living in famous tourist destination. Okay. Now, I think it's about someone who shares their experience of living in a tourist destination. We will still be picking up out, I think, points in favor and against over tourism in places. In the summer, Paolo Santini shares his hometown with 3 million temporary residents. Cultured man, Paolo has worked for 40 years in the city's museum, curating the region's ancient treasures exhibited for the visitors. Indeed, the day I interviewed him, the museum was packed with weary families wandering aimlessly through Paolo's beloved artifacts. Now, this is a disadvantage that people, when they visit, you see, guys, you need to read between the lines. You need to understand what the writer is talking about. Now, your point cannot be that people wander aimlessly in museums, but your point will be that people visit even the areas that they're not aware of, and these cultural areas that mostly some people might just have no interest in going to, they still visit for the sake of those places being tourist places. And they could just overcrowd such spaces for people who genuinely care for art and history and heritage. Right? Museum में तो बड़े specific किस्म के लोग जाते हैं. But you see so many people roaming around in museums who don't even know what they're doing over there. They look so out of place. Why? Because they just know it's a tourist place and they have to go. That's so pointless. This is another disadvantage of over tourism, which is told by this person. Okay. I was born here, he says. In what was a rural backwater a few miles away, my father had a small farm and eked out a living. But it was tourism that gave me my profession and a decent standard of living. A lot of money has gone into making the city a popular destination. Now, this is a positive point that this person is talking about, that they were living in an area that had a little potential, and and his father owned a very small farm in that area. But when tourism grew, this person got his profession. Paolo was telling that He started earning decently just because there were more people visiting in and the area became commercialized. So this is another advantage of tourism. Advantage हो गया, ठीक है? He owns a modest house on the outskirts of the city in what used to be a fishing village where his ancestors sold their catch on the beach. It's become a popular area in recent years for summer homes for those who live elsewhere most of the year. Paolo says the summers are difficult for locals. The traffic is suffocating and the pavements are crowded and hot. At least the city's facilities are open all year now. Everything used to close in the winter. Most of the cultural events and festivals are still organized around the visitors. We've spent decades improving the visitor experience. As they say, Paolo betrays only a hint of irony. So they're saying that another disadvantage of this place is that they've worked a lot on improving the visitor experience. Paulo betrays only a hint of irony. This means that the writer is being a little sarcastic over here in their claim that they've worked a lot on improving the visitor experience. That means the locals have to work for their areas to become tourist acceptable and for their areas to be accepted by people and so that they can be easily listed as an important tourist destination so people can visit those areas, right? This could be another negative impact. But at the same time, there is a positive of this as well that if let's say people are visiting your place, you can obviously offer more cultural events, you can offer more festivals. It could be a chance of you letting your culture out. It could be a chance of you sharing your ideas with the world, your tradition and your culture with the world, right? This could be a positive impact of tourism. So we've picked up one negative, one positive. City central squares are lined with cramped, packed cafes and restaurants, which make me question the visitor's experience. Local shops have been bought up and converted to cafes and souvenir shops. This is another negative impact. That there's so much generalization that these places that used to be these small, important, intimate spaces for the users of that particular area, they're now just becoming these souvenir shops and big cafes that are just there for the tourists, right? So there's no essence of originality left in these places. There are no chemists or butchers left in the center now, and the rents are sky high. You see, essential facilities are no more over there. Chemists and butchers, they must have been sidelined, and important city centers might might be just now used for these commercial places. And then the rents are also high. Paolo says his adult son lives at home, unable to afford his own house. Affordability for locals. Remember, we were already talking about affordability over here. So you can join these 2 points. Paolo is ambivalent. The city has given me a good life, better than I could have expected as a child. In my line of work, cultural exchange between people is good, and tourism can expand all our horizons. But I hope we know how and when to put the brakes on it. This person at the end is hopeful. He's saying cultural exchange is important. A benefit kya hai? That you get to learn about different cultures and you can expand your ideas, your knowledge on things, but it should be controlled. You should know when to control it. Now, guys, we've got quite a few points in favor and against tourism. Ambivalent का मतलब होता है having confused feelings for something. Like this person felt good about tourism and also bad at the same time. He had a few positives and negatives altogether. Okay. So now, up, because we have all these points on advantages and disadvantages, we are supposed to write upon these points. We're supposed to use these points. How to use these points? This is what we need to think on. Let's get back to the question that we have. Write an article for young people advising them what they need to consider when deciding on a holiday destination. So, what they need to consider, guys, what do you think? What are the factors that need to be considered when deciding on holiday destination? Think about whatever you've read up till now. What comes into your mind when you think about this question?
Sir, to be mindful of the places you're going to visit.
Exactly. In terms of in terms of the risks you might impose on those places, right? In terms of
Yes.
how you will yourself be for these places. So you need to think about all of these things because up you see now since you've read the article or these two passages, you have an idea as to what we're talking about. You see, when we were reading this question before we had read these passages, we had all sorts of ideas. We didn't know how to confine ourselves, but now we know our boundaries. The factors that you need to consider while deciding for a holiday destination are supposed to be upon you as a tourist impacting that place, positives and negatives of tourism. So now you need to think whether tourism, whether you agree or disagree with tourism being a good idea, or you think no, you need to decide on a holiday destination that's untapped, maybe that's less crowded, right? That's not visited by a lot of people. So you need to think on these lines. So your stance will for this question will be either you're writing in favor of visiting a place that is already crowded, right? By crowded, I mean a place that's already visited
सर
by a
ये
lot of
40 मार्क्स का क्वेश्चन है
ये मैंने पहले बताया था आईजीसीएसई का फॉर्मेट है दिस इज फॉर आईजीसीएसई
ओ
crowded or famous. Now let's mark a clear distinction between our choices. Either we're supposed to go with the side that okay, it's okay to choose famous tourist destinations that are visited by a lot of people all around the year, or you should visit some place new, some place that's untapped or not visited by a lot of people. Now, guys, if you think that visiting a place that is already famous uh, is the right choice for this passage, or which is crowded, so you will pick up all the points in favor of this, the benefits of tourism. You might just start agreeing with this particular thing, transformation of lives, services, more destinations. You will be agreeing with decent standard of living, earning money, cultural events, festivals, cultural exchange, learning more ideas. You'll agree with all of these points. But if you were maybe agreeing with the second idea that tourism should be done in places that are not explored or the areas that are untapped, then you will write why. Because there's going to be no threat of overcrowdedness, no threat of fragility to landscapes, no threat of overburdenizing the resources such as energy, water, health sector, right? I hope you're getting me. So your stance has to
जी
be on either one of these. And remember, whatever you pick up, your ideas to support that will come from the message. Let's just assume the most wiser option for this question will be to go with the second option because you have a lot more to write on this. Writer has talked a lot about not visiting famous places. So you should also say that, okay, visiting famous places is not a good idea because you'll get a lot of agreement on this. Okay. So, let's just assume this is the stance that we agree with. Right. Hold on. Let me use a different color. Um, this is the stance that we agree with. And this is the stance that we disagree with. So, we're going to start writing our article. Number one, with a title. You can decide on a title after you're done writing. Okay. Title, there's no pressure in writing a title before you start with it because you'll obviously, you won't know what's a suitable title until you have written a complete thing. Then your first few lines will be of the introduction. And remember, introduction mein hi, you guys clarify your stance. Just a few lines. Remember, 3 to 4 lines are more than enough for introduction. And you tell the writer, you tell the examiner in the beginning that what side you're agreeing with. If you're writing, okay, young people should make certain choices while deciding on a holiday destination. I think they should pick up areas which are not very famous and should explore untapped areas. That's it. This should be enough. Then your first paragraph will be all about your agreement. Agreement to your stance, your reasons for why you think this is true. So that means you're going to pick up all the points. Let's say we pick up almost 7 points from the passage, 7 content points from the passage to support your agreement. All right. 7 supporting claims are supposed to be picked up from the passage. Then you're going to write about your disagreement. That means you need to pick up then 3 points disagreeing with whenever the writer says it is okay to visit famous places. Okay. Okay, there are claims where the writer is already agreeing with that, that there's going to be a lot of cultural exchange happening. You're going to be learning about so many new things. So you can say that it's not important that you visit these famous places to learn about these places. You've got internet, you've got books, you can just read about them. You can study about them online. Why do you have to visit these places? This is just a reason to disagree. Okay. So you need to think on these lines. Disagreement of 3 points that go against you. All right. So again, your disagreement will be to option number one over here. If option number one is for crowded and famous places, so your disagreement is to this particular option. And then you can write again 3 to 4 lines of a conclusion at the end. Is this clear to you guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
3 to 4 lines of this and 3 to 4 lines for this as well. Any questions? Please, if there's anything that's not clear, ask right now. Okay. One very important tip is that while practicing, okay, not for the examination, but while practicing for this question, you see the way we underlined all of these things, please use a pencil and a pen and underline your arguments that are in opposing arguments in 2 different colors. Okay. Maybe use 2 different colors or use 2 different highlighters and highlight all the points of side A in a different color and all the points of side B in a different color. Once you've done that, start writing them down. Make a list of all the arguments that support side A and all the arguments that support side B. Make a list with you, with yourself. And once you've made the list, it will be easier for you to pick up sides and see which points that you're agreeing with and which points you're disagreeing with. Then, obviously, once you have these 2 lists, you will agree with one list, right? You'll know which side to agree with. So, you will start thinking on the reasons for that agreement. And the other list is what you will disagree with. So you'll start thinking on the reasons for your disagreement with that side. No, you cannot use highlighter in your exam. You cannot even use 2 different colored pens. So this is just for practice. I'm just saying for practice, you can use highlighters and you can even write down the points. An exam, you won't have enough time to maybe write these points in a listed form first and then pick up your favorite points. No, this is just for practice. But in your exam paper, once you're sitting the CIE, you just can use a pencil and a pen to highlight or to underline these phrases from the passage, mark them there and then on the on the insert and start writing right away. You can make a rough outline the way I've made it here for you guys. Again, this is a pattern, not an outline. In an outline, you write specifics. You write what you need to write with. Okay, if I'm writing for the introduction, I'm going to write, okay, I'm agree with this, this, and that. Okay, then my second line will be this. Okay, and then if you're writing agreement, you write a few reasons, whatever you think about that, few reasons for disagreement, and few reasons for conclusion, just in bulleted form with with a pencil on the paper for your understanding. So you have so you know what you're writing on. Have your thoughts collected, guys. For English paper, it's extremely important that you collect your thoughts, you know what you're writing, you know what you're getting into, your stance is clear, you have your reasons for whatever you're writing. Is this clear to you guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.